crafty friends, I'm Lien and I'm so glad you're joining me again today on the Crafty Meraki YouTube channel, and I have a no-line coloring video for you today. The first piece of this card I made off screen, and that's just the die cutting bit. I die cut a panel from watercolor cardstock with the largest timeless frame mini slimline die by Crafty Meraki. I die cut that from watercolor cardstock. This is the Canson Montval 300 GSM watercolor cardstock, and I put that in my Misti to stamp one of the Birds of Paradise stamps on there in Ink on 3 no line coloring ink. And I'm also stamping this on a full stick post-it note to create a mask, and I will use that later. Now straight into the coloring. I have sped this up quite a bit, because no line coloring takes me a while to do, especially when watercoloring. It's a little bit easier and a little bit quicker with colored pencils, but with watercolor I spend a lot of time on it. And I don't mind showing you all of that, but I have to talk over it, so that can get boring really quickly. Now I'm just watercoloring this like I watercolor any image, whether that's no line coloring or whether I have a clear outline. I watercolor the same way all the time. And that is just by putting the intense color down where I want the shadow to be. And then I clean off my brush. I dab off any excess water onto a cloth that I have on my desk. And then I can blend out that intense color and make it lighter as I go to the lightest side of the image. And the second step in that is quite important. I dab off my brush, or I dab off the water on my brush before I bring it to the paper, because it's really hard to control where your paint goes, where your color goes, if your brush is a little bit too wet. Knowing how much water to put on your brush or how much is too much is the hardest thing to figure out when watercoloring, and you really only learn it through practice. I can't tell you how much water you need for any given image, but just experiment a little bit, practice it, and you'll get the hang of it in time. Now for these wings, I am doing a bit of blending between colors. And because I'm using yellow here, it's a little bit tricky to do because the red and the blue tend to overpower the yellow. So I'm doing the same for the tail here, and the trick is to really use a minimal amount of water and paint, and make sure you blend from the yellow into the red and not the other way around. So for the blue, I will drag that up to the yellow. I will drag it up a little bit further to create a bit of green, and then I blend from the yellow into the blue again. So if you're creating one of these blends with a yellow or a really pale color, blend from that palest color to your darker color, and that will make sure you avoid any one color overpowering the other. Now to bring in a little bit of detail back into the image on the feathers and on the tail, I am going to insert some lines again in my no line coloring art, and I'm just using the same colors I used but quite intensely and not watering them down too much. To add in the eyes, I'm using a black colored pencil. You can use a fine liner for this. I'm just more comfortable using pencils, so that's what I'm using here, and the color is quite intense anyway. Otherwise I would have gone over it again with a fine liner maybe, but this worked out for me. I did add some details back into the eyes with a white gel pen later on, and I'm adding a little bit more shading on the beak also with colored pencils. And I'm doing the same for its little feet. Now I put the mask in place on the bird, and it doesn't quite fit because I usually go outside of the lines with my no line coloring. I have a really hard time seeing the lines sometimes, and I mean, if the image looks good in the end, I don't mind it too much, but it's a little bit annoying when you've created a mask for it. So my mask doesn't quite fit, but luckily my sky is quite light, so it doesn't really matter. I am using the Ocean Breeze ink by Pinkfresh Studio and a cloud stencil by My Favorite Things. I will list all the supplies I used in the description below. so you can check that if I go a bit too quickly here. I'm blending that on with a blender brush for a nice light blend, and I did think that that last cloud was a bit too harsh of a line, so I blended a couple of clouds more on there in a more pale blue. Now this is the frame that fits around it, and I wanted to add some color to that as well. I'm using that same Ocean Breeze ink, but I'm blending it on a little bit more intensely. And again, I've sped this up quite a bit. This did take me a little bit of time. I am just adding that with a blender brush, but not going to cover the entire frame. I'm going to leave the inside mostly white. But this just makes it so my cast card has a nice pop of color around it. I did also add a little bit of blending all the way around my inside panel as well, because I wanted a bit of contrast between the panel and the frame. I'm stamping a sentiment on there, and this is from My Favorite Things. I really love this stamp set. It's the Bitty Bears stamp set. I hope it's still in production, but it's one of those oldies but goodies. I really love the sentiments on there, and the bears are adorable too. Now I folded my card base, and I made that quite small for a mini slimline card. I think it measures 6 1/4 inch by 3 inches. So it's quite small, but it fits perfectly behind that frame. That's how I measured it. And that way you don't see any card base poking out around the frame. And I did make this a top folding mini slimline card. I've never made one before, but because I'm making it slightly smaller, it just worked out from an A4 size piece of cardstock. And I glued the frame on first with Bailey Art Precision Craft glue, and then I can just inlay my panel on there. I'm adding a couple of embellishments by Little Things from Lucy's Cards. These are just the clear hearts. They are really beautiful. They just add a really subtle touch of shimmer on your card. Now you know me, I love making my matching envelopes, but I do also love to keep them simple. So this one was really quick to make. I just folded a mini slimline envelope with my We Are Memory Keepers 123 punch board, trimmed off the excess on the bottom and top flap, and then I can assemble this with some more of that Barely Art Precision Craft glue. Once that's done, I am going to do something I haven't done before, but I might do it a little bit more often in the future because I really like it. I am doing some stamping on the inside of the envelope, so when you open it up, you see a hint of the card already. I am using that same image, and I'm stamping that in the Pinkfresh Studio Coral Reef ink. Now there's also an image of a bird flying away, and I'm stamping that on the outside of the envelope because I couldn't just leave that blank. And that's it, a clean and simple envelope and card. I really love the no-line coloring look. I haven't done it in a while, but I really enjoyed doing it today. I hope you like it too. If you did, make sure to leave a thumbs up on this video and leave your comments in the comment section below. I would love to read them. Of course, you can also subscribe to the Crafty Meraki YouTube channel for more inspiration from me and some other members from the design team. I hope you stay tuned for more videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.